bonjour tout le monde. Bienvenue au Congrès pan-canadien de partage des compétences sur la prévention.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the National Skillshare Series on addressing and preventing gender-based violence at post-secondary institutions in Canada. My name is Andrea Sanjoli, and I'm the coordinator of the Francophone activities of the Courage to Act project. We're thrilled to welcome you to our Skillshare session today with Melissa Mollen Dupuis. Before we begin, a quick note on language and accessibility. Attendees can turn on or off captioning in Zoom as needed by clicking closed caption in the controls bar at the bottom of your screen. You can also listen to this session in French by selecting the French language channel using the interpretation, or English using the interpretation menu. Today's session is being recorded and will be available on our website along with a transcript of the session. A graphic recording will also be created from today's presentation by Annalie from Drawing Change. Their role is to listen deeply and translate our ideas into visuals. You can watch Annalie drawing as she follows along with the session. There will be graphic recordings available for all Skillshare sessions, which you can find on the Education tab of our website, and when they are released as part of the community of practice tools via the Courage to Act Knowledge Center. Courage to Act is a two-year national initiative to address and prevent gender-based violence on post-secondary campuses in Canada. It builds on the key recommendations within Possibility Seat's vital report. Courage to Act, developing a national framework to address and prevent gender-based violence at post-secondary institutions. Our project is a first national collaborative of its kind to bring together scholars, experts, and advocates from across Canada to end gender-based violence on campus. A key feature of our project is our National Skillshare Series, where our working groups, communities of practice, and keynote speakers will discuss tools, trends, and strategies that will shape how we address and prevent gender-based violence on campus. Through the Skillshare series, we are so pleased to introduce and offer insight into the development of the tools and resources created by gender-based violence experts across the country, which will officially be launching in August 2021. There will be a chance to sign up for piloting opportunities via the Courage to Act Knowledge Center in fall 2021. Attendees will join a connected network of experts and advocates across Canada who are exploring urgent issues and promising practices. Supported by CACUSS, these Skillshare sessions are also a recognized learning opportunity. Attendance at 10 or more live webinars and our National Skillshare Series sessions will count towards an online certificate. Our project is made possible, again, our project is made possible through generous support and funding from the Department of Women and Gender Equality, Federal Government of Canada. We begin today's session by acknowledging that this work is taking place on and across the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations. We recognize that gender-based violence is just one form of violence caused by colonization to marginalize and dispossess Indigenous people from their lands and waters. Our project strives to honor this truth. As we move toward decolonizing this work and actualizing justice for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls across the country. This work can be challenging. Many of us may have our own experience of survivorship and of supporting those we love and care about who have experienced gender-based violence. A gentle reminder here to be attentive to our well-being as we engage in these difficult conversations. You can visit the self-care section of our Skillshare webpage or visit our self-share room by visiting the link in the chat. You can also follow along on Twitter with hashtag GBV National Skillshare. You are invited to enter questions anytime into the Q&A box throughout the session and to share your comments throughout the session too. So please know that it is possible to ask your questions in English or in French. We will answer them at the end of the presentation. So don't hesitate to ask your questions throughout the session. We will try to do our best to respond to them. At the end of today's session, you will also find a link to the evaluation form. We would appreciate it if you would take a few minutes to give us your feedback, as it helps us to improve. Please know that your participation will be anonymous. After the session, I will also send you an email with a copy of the evaluation form and a link to the recording so you can watch it again and share it in your networks. It is with great pleasure that I introduce you now to Melissa Mollen Dupuis, who is originally from Ekuanitshit on the North Shore. After a long professional career during which she shared the richness of her Innu culture with the public in 2012 with Widia Larivière to the Quebec branch of the Idle No More movements. In 2014, she was named president of board of directors of Wapikoni Mobile, and in 2017, she received the Ambassador of Conscience Award from Amnesty International along with 5 other Canada's Indigenous Peoples Movement and Alicia Keys. Since 2018, she is responsible for the Forest campaign led by David Suzuki Foundation. So I will stop sharing my screen right now. Okay. So hi, Melissa, welcome. And thank you for joining us today. I hope you're doing right today. Oh yes, it is a very nice weather today. It is, well, sun is not there yet. I think we are in a big need of spending time outside, you know, and to be healed from this pandemic. Oh yes, definitely. Okay, so let's start. We don't have enough time today. So the first question is pretty general. Actually, we wanted to know if you can tell us a little bit about your background and what first sparked your interest and what keeps you engaged in this work? Like, is there a guidance thread through all of your professional and personal activism? Well, yes, why I became an activist, because for the simple reason I was born as an Indigenous woman in Canada. So again, I was already on the path of activism, and also to take into consideration the challenges of health services, with violence, with the government. There is a huge confusion with the government about what the Indigenous people were saying across Canada. And being a woman and being an Indigenous woman, there is a statistics, there is kind of figures when it comes to talk about our people. So we are whether victims, they are always thought about us as casualties when it's a matter of victims murdered or victims of violence. Is it because they are only women? Is it because they are Indigenous women? So you can imagine all these questions I have been asking myself when I was younger. But for me, all Indigenous people were looked at as being alcoholic people only. So many bias that I cannot explain very easily, because it like a lot of damage. So many questions, and I'm just wondering why my grandparents would behave differently from other people from nowadays. So you can imagine what kind of questions I have in my mind. And the key moment for me, it was the Oka crisis, because all what was reported by the media was Indigenous people blocking the roads. And I was like, no, they should not be doing this way, because we already are hated. We are not very liked. We're not very appreciated. So it is called, known as the Oka crisis. And actually, it is to be considered as a resurgence, a resurrection. Like, so I was wondering about where I am at now. What is the story? What's going on? And pretty smoothly, pretty slowly, I was just wondering, why are we away? Why are we always away from the spotlights? And people pretty important who were playing the role of leadership, people who were recognized by our communities, that they were not very famous and by the media or in the media. So you can imagine a 14, 15-year-old young woman trying to know more about Greek and Roman history and other histories, while when it came to my own history, it was a big question mark. So I was just trying to find out what is the best way for me, what would be the template, what is the image, the picture of the indigenous people, because it was not a very good idea or image. It was a biased, distorted image. So it's just like the cowboy movies. So I started seeking, trying to find out more about my identity, the multiple nations existing in the country of Côte-Nord, and we just wanted to stop calling them or considering them only as feathered people. So this led me to go in the north to study, because I am an artist, first of all, and the mission is so big, so important, that I had no choice but to be an activist. So while going to the UQAM University, we were very absent when it came to art. So how come we can see or know more about the art or indigenous art when it is not there at all? And how to get to know more about our realities. So what I was trying to do is to do some presentations, some performance. My very first one was in the SAT, in a public space. It was for to pay tribute to the murdered indigenous women. And there were 35 women, indigenous prostitutes who have been murdered, and we wanted to give them a name, to give a picture of these victims. So all this had happened back in 2012. It was a many things have happened. So we were thrilled to see what we were seeing. We were not expecting this to be that shown. And so of course, it was taught about in both languages. So we were just like, okay, what are we supposed to do? So we organized the first rally, and which, you know, it was kind of wave that we have been mobilizing a lot, because there was a kind of vacuum, there was a big gap in the media about us. So we had to do something to make our voices heard, particularly when it comes to popular education, because we are pretty sure that with the help of popular education, things can get better. So there are many important or key moments. So I'm like just have been vacuumed, but now I am considering myself as an activist, an advocate, and of course, as I'm conveying my message as often as I can. Yes, of course. I think there's something artistic in this, that we heard about a lot of things in this first answer. So you have a long history. You directed a short film titled Missing and Murdered Native Women in 2012. Could you tell us about why this was an important project and the key message you want viewers to leave with? How would you like them to be speaking about that? Oh, thank you for mentioning this, because we like, I am branded to be an activist only, but before that, I am an artist. And this activism, it was just to make sure to convey the message, to play the role of a bridge, of a channel, to deliver kind of message. So what I did with a video, with dolls to which I gave names of the women who have been murdered, and I considered this as an anecdote, a miscellaneous fact. So it is just to tell you about the big need we had, because the women, indigenous women, it's kind of world, different world. So we are rallying. We are trying to do our utmost to speak about our disappeared people so many times for such a long time that now it is only about unveiling, you know, the very first step which helped make sure there is an investigation that has started that really encouraged us. But still, the challenge was not the story. We are not talking about only a big bad wolf, but still we had to communicate with the police, with the justice system, with the ignorance, you know, the voluntary violence when it's about the indigenous women. So we were walking down the streets and we were doing this at least twice a year, at least only to speak or to convey messages about violences against indigenous women. I have been doing this within the reserves also, and they have been associated, all this have been associated to the, of course, we associated this to the indigenous culture, because for me, this is culture, paintings and performances. And when I started studying at UQAM, the name of the course has changed. It became visual arts, and I didn't want to do this video. I just wanted to focus on painting. But when I started doing my videos and directing them, it turned out to me that that was a natural way how to do this kind of follow-up with the indigenous communities, how to tell, how to show and to give pictures. It is a logical follow-up, if I might say so, for the indigenous culture. So I even worked for the many crowds that have been organized for two victims, indigenous women, and I was explaining at the very same period of time during which they have been murdered. There was also a story of a lion that escaped from the community, and we were making the difference between, like, it was kind of, it didn't make sense, like two indigenous women have been murdered, nothing, no spotlight at all about their murder. But when a lion escaped, you have the infrared tools of the police, investigations, searching for the lion. So I was just wondering, what if I would disappear? What if I would vanish? Is a lion better than I am? So by sharing all these stories, we found out that um, the orality is very important to show the person it is matter of, to see them in their eyes, to hear them. So we found out, in other words, that the movie or cinema is really helpful for us to have people more attracted. Oh, thank you so much. So I would encourage everyone to go and watch the short movie that you directed. So, and we'll make sure maybe that it can be available. And also, yes, by the way, many artists have been presented in the movie, and it is through the art that we want to make sure the voices of indigenous people and indigenous women are heard, because we were not visible at all. So we want to move forward and make sure our voices are heard, are more visible, so that the government structure would follow. They would at least start implementing our ideas and our ways of, of shouting to make sure our voices are heard. And again, there's a lot to do. There's still a lot to do. Yes, I'd like to get back to a point. There is a great passion. Melissa, you are so passionate about the environment and its features heavily in your work. You also, if you can tell us about the link existing between, racial justice, gender justice. Can you tell us more about the link between, like, all these, environmental justice, racial justice, and gender justice? Well, this is a question that many people, I am being asked how come you are awarded for rights, human rights, but you turn to the environment? Yes, well, human rights, it is our daily life, for Indigenous people. It's all related because basically the coast is a territory, it is environment, it is resources, colonization. It's all about that. So currently we can see the impact of the climate change are first of all lived by the Indigenous people. The big impact is on the Indigenous people. And what happens is that, like, because of the climate change impact, the very first thing that would disappear is the human rights, the protection of children, protection of elderly, uh, protection of racialized people, people who have disabilities, also people who have mental disease, so conditions. So the structure is not taking profit from all that, while we are responsible as a society and also as women to protect the children of the community. So when I have opted to go to environment, for me, it is a logical pathway to better and more protect our environment, our community. There are environmentalist people and there are Indigenous people. There is a slight difference between both, but sometimes we have environmental missions that implies to protect food, to protect the forest, to protect trees. And so being Indigenous is matter of protecting the territory, culture, women, food, forest. It becomes a kind of a protection net and mesh that would protect our communities. And also there are many other reasons why I have been mobilized in 2012 because of the rules of the Harper government. We saw that one of the oldest rule was about to be cancelled, and we have not been able to understand this. And then we we found out that it was for the aqueduct, for the schist gas, and again, if I look at my daughter, I can see the millennium water that goes back to my mother, my grandmother, my ancestor, until to get my main ancestor, who is the earth. So it is up to us to protect the earth. It's not romantic, it's not literature, it's really a river. And I will urge you to see Christian Balcour artwork about the rights of the Indigenous that would go back to the origin, the source of water. They are very related, the grandmothers and the earth. There's a strong relationship. So sometimes people are accumulating richness while we are wasting or losing our culture that is our earth that is part of our culture. So it is only kind of cannibalism. It looks like cannibalism, a cannibal people who are eating their offspring's shell. So again, this is for us, environment is kind of basket for all the other elements as human rights, as culture and everything. And that's why, again, I opted for the environmental, particularly for people who think about that with intersectionality between all these items and these elements. And by the way, today or maybe tomorrow, it will be the 3rd year that I am here. And let me tell you, I'm not getting bored at all. I love what I do. Oh, definitely, yes. There's a lot that have been done, and still a lot is pending. Yes, definitely. Yes. Oh, this question really empowers me. So it is really important for community, indigenous community, for environmental and for violence. Yes, definitely. Earth is feminism itself. If we do harm to Earth, we are doing harm to women. So if a woman is murdered, it's because of colonization, because it is pushing people, indigenous people, to be away from their territories. So it is our vision to see and to consider this structure. It is so visible, so we're just wondering why people don't see it yet. Yes, definitely, exactly. We were saying this at the introduction. Of course, the indigenous women, girls, and two-spirit individuals face the highest risk of sexual and gender-based violence in Canada. So how can post-secondary institutions move towards decolonizing their programming, policies, and practices for survivors, and to make sure we're able to support the survivor people, generally speaking, and more particularly those originated from indigenous people? Yes, mainly on the last year, because I don't want to decolonize everything, because anyway, we cannot decolonize everything. Let me tell you this. But again, decolonizing the scientific environment, the knowledge environment, the reason why I worked, because I based a lot, I insist a lot on the ancestry knowledge. This is a huge challenge that I've been working on last year, and also taught, have a lecture for this kind of course for indigenous women. But the thing that I am not ready to forget is how have I been able to have access to this great privilege to teach? It's because there was so many colonial obstacles, structural obstacles that would prevent me from doing it. What was really funny is that when university wants to offer courses on indigenous challenges, and they would go to find indigenous teachers, they are putting some kind of obstacles for kind of diploma, because even though I'm graduated for visual arts and legal studies, all what I have been learning would not allow me to have this piece of paper to help me teaching at the UQAM. So my elderly, relationship with the with elder people of my community, all this is kind of certification for me, but still it was not recognized as being so, as a graduation. So the university had to, they were just like, they were not accepting their own structure, because for them, they were considering this structure as a wall, preventing me from sharing my experience and my courses. So I have been co-teaching with another indigenous woman, and I was very happy. I was glad, because it was a very trustful person that I know for years now. But again, I was not able to do it by myself and to convey all my knowledge. So I think there's a lot of work that is being done in campuses, in universities, because that's what is missing in the knowledge library, because we did not, it has not been considered as valid. Sometimes it is to have decolonized job offers. That's what I've noticed. Such and such diploma. I was like, oh no, I can't get me this job. And then, okay, this is recognized as ancestry knowledge. And it was like, oh, I'm able to do that. Oh, wonderful. So this is to tell you how to offer access to a person who has the knowledge, and to think about the obstacles that will prevent this person to convey their knowledge, because during decades, who, I mean, there were no scientific, who was researching things, who was doing research? Asian people, Black people, indigenous people, the majority of them are people who were not allowed any access to this way of doing it, and to have this kind access to this kind of institution. And so it is matter of internal racism. So all this knowledge was missing for the last years. So let's say X or Y research have been done about hairs, and also about hunters, rabbit hunters. So it is a way of excluding another part of the population, because the reason was that scientists were not open to make sure the doors were open to them. So, of course, to have access to this kind of knowledge. And also another way to help doing some researches. It is very complex, very complicated, but this is to tell you, like, just imagine an indigenous woman who doesn't speak neither French nor English and who'd like to know more, like how to convey their knowledge. So this led us to challenges for people who wanted to have access to this knowledge regarding indigenous communities, or how to know more about the indigenous knowledge and to convey it to any other party who would be interested in. So we want to have access to this kind of knowledge very easily. And the best way is to do it with people who know a lot about codes. Like if I think about the USA, Mrs. Balazar, who has been considering herself as an Afro-American while she was right, while she is right, but she succeeded how to go up, to rise in hierarchy, because she was very well knowledgeable of the codes, but also by using the personality and the formula to go through the formula imposed by the university. So maybe there is a need of stepping back because we have not established yet a relationship. I mean, protocols have not been established yet when it's matter of pretty spiritual people within or in indigenous communities, because they are more knowledgeable and better knowledgeable of the terms, of a way of indigenous thinking. So we see it's pretty complicated. So when I tell you decolonizing all these items, I would need much more time. Oh, yes, indeed. I think other people should be joining here so that so that it can made possible. So this really showed us how important are challenges and obstacles that are within universities and campuses. So there's a lot to do, still a lot to do. We were, by the way, speaking about collaboration, be them scientific or with indigenous. As interest is getting bigger and more important for this kind of collaboration, but some of them are not all fruitful. So the question is, um, how can college and universities work alongside indigenous communities to better support indigenous folks living, studying, and or working on campus? The most difficult what I can see here is in the situation, like largely, as a broadly, it is matter of building a relationship, a very significant relationship. We're talking about reconciliation, but what does this mean? Is it about to tell, okay, I apologize in a huge universe? Or is it about saying, okay, what kind of situation I am in? How can I develop a significant relationship with the community or with an indigenous person? Or maybe how to build the intention of researching, the intention of developing a program, or how to save an entire community. It is pretty hard because there is a lack of self-examination, and also sometimes it is matter of of undoing a certain system regarding the community that you are ready to visit. And also it will be up to this community what they want to give back. Because we have also seen many researchers where knowledge have been stolen, misunderstood, generalized, and sometimes it is because of a narrative or storytelling that's not ours. Sometimes I'm very frustrated uh, by a kind of museum online by using the name of museum while they are posting or publishing statements very with a lot of prejudice about the indigenous history. So when we want to intervene and tell them, no, how come? You need to correct this and that. We have been blocked and we have not been able to add our comments anymore. And so many other people have been blocked from our community. So you can imagine this is an extreme experience. And just to tell you that in the past, many institutions, campuses, universities have had similar experiences because they were misinterpreting, misunderstanding some stories. They did it the way they wanted to do it, the way of thinking about the culture, while our elderly were not agreeing, and they would come telling us, we are the researcher, we want to help you, we know how to do it. But sometimes indigenous people would reject this because they have been through this kind of experience before. So there is a kind of superiority, cultural superiority, and super ego, and people would reject this kind of approach. Like, let me tell you about Serge Bouchard, an anthropologist who have contacted the community in a very humble way, with a lot of respect. If I can give you an example of the stories of the where he had published what he has been told about the stories he has been told. So we made sure that a lot of work has been done in translation to make sure what was meant by this, instead of trying to tell. He hasn't do that. He hasn't decided to do it his way or the way he understood it. And so, like, as far as when I was about the story of Ratu and his pigs, I wasn't able to read Matthew's stories, but when the way he wrote it, the way he reported it, I was able to better understand it, And so Serge Bouchard did such a great job that I have had a very interesting experience that has been, like, I was wondering what would that mean, because there was matter of other anthropologists presenting very unique stories, like all indigenous people are this and that. And so, of course, we also have the right to have our variety. Of course, there is individuality with indigenous people, and also to, like, the text, the storytelling of Mathieu and the Biggs was a very good experience for me. So this can give you an idea about a lot to do or to say about how to do it. It is to take the time. And by the way, we want to express our gratitude towards Serge Bouchard because he really adopted us. He really created a very strong relationship during which he would come over to, there was a back and forth interaction between our both parties that helped a lot. And this is not a very often way of doing things. Particularly when it comes to preparing a doctorate. But when it is matter of interaction between two humans and about other humans, I think this work should be transformed in such a way. Yes, and we were talking about systemic barriers. I think there are many things that need to be reviewed. There is more flexibility and possibilities to be expected to better face these aspects and to make sure all conditions are optimal to better develop these links and to make sure they deserve to be developed, to be implemented as you are just describing it. Yes, there is a difference. Like when a nurse or a teacher comes with a mentality of, to save our community, it's after a year they would go back home. They won't be, appreciating their experience because they have not been able. They just, they just came as, I'm sorry to use these words, as a save white. Uh, you know, they have babies with people, and you know, you can see there is integration, and the work of these people help them to take profit because there is respect and there's openness. Of course, I'm not saying, I'm not branding every single people coming to work with our communities, but there is a difference between people who are stubborn, I would might say so, and others who are open. Maybe another question, then we'll go ahead and have more questions for people who have questions. Please start sending us your question in the chat box. Maybe a last question. There was more centered. Of course, a lot of Indigenous authors and filmmakers have spoken about framing stories about Indigenous people in joy, because Indigenous joy can exist alongside trauma and pain, reminding us that despite everything, Indigenous people are still here, surviving and thriving. How can Indigenous communities and PCIs create space for and foster Indigenous joy? It is pretty hard to, develop a program unique for everyone. Of course, what is important is to have a space, a secured space for Indigenous women. I can recall when I have been to the campus, there was a specific building for Indigenous people. What I can tell you is, at the very beginning, I didn't have any opportunity to know or to meet other Indigenous people, but it is that helped me to stay at the school. I felt it less isolated, less alone. People were working with us with the help of different programs, and also, and my core, particularly when I got out of my community, was not to feel isolated in a region as Alma, and so to have a facility where we can at least, cook together, send one another emails, because sometimes he was part of to find a place with Wi-Fi available, or a Tim Horton, because we can be washed by cashiers and all these things. So it was important for us. Second step was when I have been to UQAM. It was a circle of programming of UQAM. It was very interesting. This helped me to take part to promotion activities, uh, but again with an Indigenous perspective, and to interact with other groups. And I was seeing the capability and the capacity we had to take part in activities. And of course, because of the difficulties, of the challenges, we started anyway discussing, we're all together. What can be important today, nowadays, if there is a big interest about the Indigenous matters, is not to see each and every Indigenous to promote the Indigenous culture, security, reconciliation. It's not because we are Indigenous that we are spokespeople of Indigenous community. Even though I have been presenter at a given structure, I am, it just to give an idea in the Montreal environment that helped. But this is tiring. and also reducing. I felt reduced sometimes. What I had to explain why, for me, speaking about Star Wars, as I usually do it, at Radio Canada, for instance, it is an Indigenous challenge. So why Baby Yoda, Star Wars? It's not important. But for me, Baby Yoda was something very interesting uh, because speaking about reconciliation, about environment, about food security, about it is always conveying a message. But when it was matter to speak about Baby Yoda and existing only, not in a mode of resistance, it's just wonderful. I just loved it. I would do it on my daily basis because I was not born to cry only, but also to interact and exchange kind of pleasure. Yeah, pleasure about Star Wars, about television, about internet. Like we have a cultural starting point where to start from, where all cultures can be all together, be it with Star Wars or with cultural moments that we do appreciate. And for me, Bibi Yoda was such a way that it was kind of small, funny wars, because we know that Bibi Yoda is indigenous, but which nation, which people? So it was Innu, and so it just, a kind of pleasure. And this doesn't exist a lot in the media when it comes to interacting with pleasure, enjoying it. So indigenous people who are working on campuses are not there to only represent indigenous people, but also to be ambassadors of the culture, of the indigenous culture. And also, it is to be, when there was a cultural war during the boarding school, the residential school of the 50s. So, for instance, in the welcoming families where the kids' language was not spoken, so it was kind of cultural cat for them. So it is, of course, always we wanna encourage. Oh, we would say, oh, this is a DJ. Okay, so let's have party all together in our place. It has nothing to do with the Innu culture. It has nothing to do with our culture. It's only because he's an artist based in Montreal and it's good. And that's all. And so just, it was well said by Florent Valland. We're not here because we are indigenous. We are here because we are good, because we exist, not only in terms of culture, but we don't want our culture to be at risk, to be in danger. So there is this, also, we don't want to forget about our struggle, our fight, very important for our reconciliation, and at least, of course, to exist at least as a person. Okay, wonderful. Now we get in the questions of the people here. So they want to know about where is it possible to watch your short film. Okay, so I added the link of it. You can see it in the chat box. Now, to make sure everyone has a possibility to watch the movie. We also have a question, very interesting, a question regarding the indigenous feminism. The question is, are there any particular characteristics that would distinguish the indigenous feminism or any other kind of feminism? If it's possible to tell us a bit more about it. Well, sometimes there is a question about the different forms or types of feminism. We talk a lot about feminism, but we talk about Euro-centered, the kind of North American type of feminism. And by the way, there are many issues or challenges that look just like the rally in Washington. We can see a rally of women with cat hats, and also of Afro-American, and another rally of indigenous women. So they were all different. Some of the issues are linked to feminism. They are not systematically linked to the social justice or the identity issue. Some feminists would reject also the bi-spiritual, what we do call bi-spiritual identity. And even now, like even though right now we do have different names for a sexual orientation. So what I can say about indigenous feminism is at the arrival of Europeans, women were already leading. We were talking about women, grandmothers as matriarchs. It was more matriarchal, of course, which means they were dominating. Like women were dominating, be it mother or a grandmother. For the Black, for instance, like the woman is the leader of the house, of the household. So it was more linked to women. So if a man would get divorced, he would go back to live with his mother. And again, the children would be staying with their uncle. So what happens with the nomads, with the Innu, we would more talk about the father who are the leader because they are the hunters, while women would stay in the camp to look after the children. So there's always also another idea of a hunter who can have two wives. They would be living all together in the camps, but also women were hunting. They were playing and having many important responsibilities. So just to let you know that roles were not divided about who can be leading, but who can assume X or Y responsibility. So they were independent from one another because sometimes the women were in charge of transforming the food while the men were hunting because they didn't have enough time to do it. And so a man without a woman was very unhappy, and a woman without a man was very unhappy. So the small hands of the women, there is a kind of balance between the roles to be shared by both men and women. So there's a type of power to and also the of course the word of the grandmothers was more important of the word of a hunter man. A man would say, okay, we'll leave tomorrow. Like if the hunter would say, okay, we're leaving tomorrow, and the grandmother would say, no, it's going to be the day after tomorrow, and then it will be the last word would be to the grandmother. So this is to tell you about the ideal, the importance. So today, nowadays, the struggle of the indigenous feminism, it includes men, women, and children. We don't need to be a woman to be a feminist, but it's for the entire family. So this is to tell you that a community is just like a table. It needs to have the four pillar. So there is a kind of balance that is required, that would require the role of men, women, and children to make sure it will be kept in terms of representativeness. Otherwise, we would be trying to give back power to men and then to women. So again, it is, of course, matter of justice, repairing justice within the community. So this is again the kind of social justice that would make sure there is a justice. So just to tell you that it is an already existing role, but it is not structured yet within the struggle. It's kind of pyramid. We only, because Of course, the pyramid is its kind of channel. It is not to be at the top of the pyramid, but to be at the basis. Thank you very much for this. We have 3 minutes left, so we'll ask the last question. Somebody is asking if it's possible to explain to us what is meant by spirituality. It is a vision that we have today about gender identity is men and women, blue and pink, female and male. It is very bipolar. While we are talking about bi-spirituality, just imagine a universe like the Earth, the North Pole and the South Pole, and in the rest of it, I would identify as a woman. I am heterosexual. I mean, not per choice. But I feel that I have many male actions that I want to undertake when it comes to responsibility, to my activities. It is as if I was somewhere in the middle of the sphere between both points. You know, I can be anywhere. Where the, like, let's say a gay man or bi. So for me, by spirituality is to play both roles, is to also exist in a it's exactly as we have been pushed for a long time. Well, these two roles that were existing in the indigenous community, we have many pictures showing this when we go back to the 19th century. So people were born as men, were identified with their penis, but they were playing female roles. So what is it to be a bisexual? What is it to be a gay? What is it to be? So we have the freedom to be existing anywhere within this universe. So we were more lucky, like, to get out of be a man or be a woman. And so we can play many roles at the same time. So it is very interesting to make sure people like men can take part in looking after children, while today to recognize the LGBTQS communities. Thank you very much. You know, it's not a social justice, I would say. Yes, but because we don't have enough time, so that's what we lead us to our closing remarks. A huge thank you to you for sharing the fruit of your labor today. As you can see, Annalie from Doreen Change has been creating a beautiful illustration to present the conversation we've had today. The final graphic along with the video recording and transcript will be available on our website in the coming days. At the very beginning, of course, don't forget, if you are interested in learning more about this tool or in learning more about the opportunity to pilot some of these tools at your post-secondary institution, please continue to follow the Courage to Act project, and you can sign up for piloting opportunities via the Courage to Act Knowledge Center in fall 2021. And don't forget that registration is open to sign up for all of the remaining sessions that are part of our National Skillshare Series, running through to August 18th, 2021. This Skillshare Series will highlight the work being done across Canada to address gender-based violence on campus. It will showcase the 15 tools and toolkit being developed by our 150 project partners, including our communities of practice. You can sign up on the Courage to Act website. I also want to thank our attendees for joining us and sharing with us today. We appreciate and take inspiration from your commitment to addressing and preventing gender-based violence on your campus. We're lucky to be able to work alongside each and every one of you. Thank you for joining us, and a kind reminder to please complete the evaluation forms. Take care, everyone.